an entire group of people invading their own city, the participation of the National Guard to drop bombs or inflame pesticide, depending on what historical account you read, on their own citizens. We are not devoid of our past. The very thing that informs our present are things that happened before we were here. And that if we aren't intentional, and history will begin to repeat itself over and over again. Because I did not know about, learn about, or hear about the Tulsa Race Massacre until I was 26 years old, living in Richmond, Virginia, in seminary, working on my second master's degree. For 26 years of my life, I was devoid of being able to know who I am and to know where I come from. If I would have known the history, I would have known that the massacre story doesn't just end with the killing and the destruction, but it also tells a story of resilience and defiance to a system of systemic oppression that continuously puts its foot on a group of people they deem to be inferior. And if I understood the power of my people in the past, I'd understand the power that I had within myself.
So I grew up in Tulsa. I was born here, went to school here, and I never heard a thing about the events of 1921 and specifically the Race Massacre until I was an adult living in another state. Actually, I was in seminary in Texas. You know, for me it was so eye-opening that I could live here and be so ingrained in the life of this city, and yet I had to be out of state in another school reading a different book to ever actually hear what happened.
I remember in the early 90s when I moved to Tulsa, it was about the same time the Greenwood Cultural Center came into existence, and decided to go in and just look at the newspapers on the wall. And I remember thinking like, okay, I'm certified to teach Oklahoma history. Is this real? You know, I was just stunned that I could be a student in this state through eventually with 2 degrees of higher learning and never have encountered this in formal education. I think if you're a person of integrity and you understand something terrible has happened historically, you gain an understanding and a conviction and a commitment to forgive yourself for not knowing, but then deciding what you're going to do going forward.
If this history was more commonly known and understood, we wouldn't be 100 years after this event, just now building a history center. We would not have still some portions of our community and country who push back against finding those who may be buried in mass graves. We would have people that would have been very supportive of this much earlier than where we are now. It's wonderful that our community and in many parts of our country are coalescing around this initiative and this effort for 2021. But imagine where we would be now as a country, as a state, as a community, if this would have been addressed many, many years before. I think the benefits of what we'll see in the years to come are things that could have happened many, many years before now.
You know, there's still a lot of healing that needs to be done in the community. So what can we, by commemorating that tragedy, how can we kind of move forward from there? So right now, people have been coming down to Greenwood and Black Wall Street. As they've learned more about the history, you know, there's like Watchmen, there's like all these shows that are there's all this national attention that this history is receiving. And they come down here and they want to know the history. You know, they want to see what's left, they want to see what it is today. And it's hard for them to have a cohesive story on their tour. And so hopefully Greenwood Rising helps them to better put the story together.
When you allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to say, what if that had been my family? What if I were seeing my business go up in flames? What if I thought my children were getting ready to be shot by U.S. aircrafts? If you allow yourself to put and walk walk in other people's shoes as part of history and not thinking about it as some dry, boring book, you know, and recognizing that the graves they're looking for right now, those are our families, you know, those are the families of Tulsans of our state, and we owe them the most respect and the greatest intention to tell those stories.
The reality is a lot of people in the community where our church is in South Tulsa, the only time they come to Greenwood or that area is to go to a baseball game or to eat at a restaurant they like. We also need to acknowledge what happens downtown in Greenwood, North Tulsa. All of that is a part of Tulsa. This is our shared community and our shared life. And so anything that our church can do to help create a bridge from the south part of Tulsa to downtown to Greenwood to North Tulsa, we want to do that. And I've found that sitting on the commission, my friends from Greenwood and North Tulsa, they want to see that bridge go both directions.
I think Tulsa is, you know, kind of known for being a bit of a segregated city racially, and hopefully this is an opportunity for us to kind of come together around something that was a traumatic experience, not just for the Black community, but for, you know, the entire city of Tulsa, and hopefully something, you know, great comes from that.
So the vision for Greenwood Rising essentially would be to educate, to inform, and then to allow for reconciliation. A place where people can come and heal from historic racial trauma, and more importantly, allow people to really take this journey together, so that we can look at our past, learn from it, and not repeat those same mistakes and move forward.
You can't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. We can't make plans for a better Tulsa. We can't make plans for a better Oklahoma without holistically and truthfully acknowledging what took place in the past. Not hiding it, not shunning it, not diluting everything that took place. Again, that's not an act of love. An act of love is telling the truth. So if you want a better Tulsa, if you want a loving Oklahoma, you're going to tell the truth.